Alrighty, welcome back everyone. It is LaughNgamez here. I'm back with another Starcraft 2 1 versus 1 bot AI cast. And we have got ourselves what should be a good one here today, as it's two very exciting to watch bots. We have got Annie Dev, big emphasis on the dev, being that I guess it's the developer's more experimental build, as a lot of bot authors have like a test version on the ladder and a just more stable version. That's a very practical way to go about testing new things. And then we have got Dodo, very excitingly, the Zerg bot that's been getting some updates. It was probably like it's been many months or maybe like a year since I cast Dodo, other than the one video I did prior to this, because Dodo is a Zerg bot programmed by the author of Zozo, which is a very good Protoss bot, and it's known for its speed mining. And it seemed more so just like a proof of concept as far as like a bot goes, but now it's been getting some more serious development, it seems, from the last game that I saw of it anyway. So now we're gonna see how it does against Annie Dev. And so, ladies and gentlemen, before we get too far into this one, as always, make sure to go ahead, click that like button if you haven't already. You guys are the best at it. You always blow it out of the water. Let's just go for 50 likes on 50 likes on this one. And of course, leave a comment down below saying more bots. I don't know, write your grocery list in the comments. Yeah, as all comments help us with the YouTube bot, which is another bot. And then subscribe if you're not subscribed. We do have double gas coming out of Dodo, as it does have high gas income for this stage in the game. A Roach Warren on the way, so it may be getting a bit aggressive early on. I'm not aware if Dodo just goes for, say, one build when it plays, or if it's got multiple potential builds programmed into it. And yeah, let's see, we've got a third hatchery going up for Dodo. Then we've got Burrow on the way and a couple of drones. Annie Dev saying 3 hatcheries, should I expand also? Which is a very reasonable approach. I mean, Annie Dev already has its first expo up, but counting your opponent's bases is something that you can do as a bot author to decide whether you go for your own expansion. Now, this one Marine for Annie Dev may actually grab an Overlord. A Queen is stepping off of creep to try and save it, but it shall not succeed. The Marine comes down, runs right into the Queen, will fight that Queen to the death and lose, unsurprisingly, but that was a long way for the Queen to go off of creep, so it's going to have missed a couple of injects, maybe a creep tumor. But for now, we do have a Dodo just having to deal with a bit of a supply block as a result of that. Annie Dev said it was going for suicidal Marines, which is a strategy we've seen before, in that it doesn't just like suicide them in, it does eventually round out the composition. And yeah, so just lots of Marines at first, but it does actually tech. It's not like a just Marine all-in or anything like that. Now Dodo has got that quick tunneling claws on the way, and you definitely can't blame a Zerg bot for rushing into that tech, as it is phenomenal when it comes to... It's phenomenal when it comes to just efficiency. Now, there's so many different ways and thresholds to go about programming that. Who did I cast? It was Dodo versus Wickedbot. We kind of saw that it can be a little bit less efficient than just sort of suiciding the roaches in and making them stand their ground, because the threshold does have to be quite high if you want that high survivability rate. For example, you need to have the roaches burrow when they've lost like maybe only like a third or less of their HP if you want them to survive most of the time. Now, I guess you could play around with lowering that threshold. That could be something you'd sort of do dynamically based on how many units your bot is losing, or how many Yeah, just how many roaches die or based on past results, that kind of thing, if you wanted to. Because there definitely is times which it's like, okay, maybe it would be better if the roaches were a little bit more risky, sort of thing. For now, we do have Dodo going up to a 4th hatchery, 3rd hatchery on the way for Annie Dev. Annie Dev, though, is crossing the map. Dodo will lose another Overlord. This was a common theme we saw from Dodo in the previous match, in that it did tend to lose a lot of Overlords. So it's supply blocked once again. Marines stimming forward from Annie Dev. Drones do get pulled into the fight. They then burrow as roaches come to save them. So very cool behavior there. That is one of the things of Zozo / Dodo / Roro, is that the bot author has got quite good fighting micro when it comes to its workers. Now, 6 drones did go down there, which is quite unfortunate. 6 drones for, well, 5 Marines, so not a terrible trade. We do have that Nidus worm now on the way for Dodo. Then Tunneling Claws as well. No upgrades on the way from the Blue Zerg yet, so the +1 will go quite nicely for Annie Dev. We do have a Nidus being called on in from Dodo. It is notably at the gold base, so it will get this gold base speed mining from the Nidus. However, it will have to hold on in order to actually reap the rewards from that. Drones thinking about getting pulled into the fight right away. These two did not get the memo when it said go home, so they went way further out. Dodo saying tag Nidus mining, 622 though, and there we have it. These drones mining from that gold base, and yeah, just pulling in that good money. The Nidus is at the natural base, and they just pop in and out and provide those gold minerals in just an instant. So a nice boost to the economy of Dodo. And it really is just something that could be quite strong on maps with gold bases in particular, I think. I honestly don't know the full rundown on how effective Nidus mining is. It's a very interesting concept, that's why we like it. The overall efficiency remains to be sort of seen and debated. Niduses are relatively cheap, but compared to just building a base, it's like, is that worth it? It definitely does have its merit in certain situations, though. For example, it might be difficult for Dodo to secure up this base, but look at this. It does just build the hatchery there. So that's a little comical, as Dodo's like Nidus mining, and then elects to go for a hatchery right beside it. But yeah, for example, on more difficult to expand 2 bases, the Nidus could have utility, as the workers can quickly escape if they get in danger, versus having your bot try and defend another location. So, very cool. As we look at the slots in that Nidus worm, as those drones kind of just bounce around. Annie Dev has built up quite a nice marine army. It does have +1 attack done, will have +1 armor. There is no such upgrades from Dodo just yet. 1-1 is so close to finishing for Dodo. It's got 10 seconds left on armor. Attack will finish up prior to this fight, so that is quite good. Now we do have Hellions from Annie Dev, which is interesting. The Terran bot pumping out lots of bio, getting +2 attack on the way, going up towards its 5th command center. So both of these bots have got very significant economies at this point. Dodo does come in for an attack, though, and Annie Dev isn't quite responding to this, so this command center will just get gobbled up by these roaches and hydras. Annie Dev must have been remustering or something, so it didn't want to take that fight. We do get a scan dropped as the bio goes in. A bit of a choke point, though, as the bio kind of has to get around that ramp. The scan does allow some of these roaches to be picked off, which is nice. I think a Raven would be a good addition here, and we do have one on the way. That is something that we've seen from Annie Dev, and it's done quite well with in the past. Roaches burrowing to get away, but as soon as they do unburrow, they do kind of get gobbled up fairly quickly. It seems the bio does have to pull back, though. It's rather overstimmed, so Annie Dev goes home. Annie Dev is down on supply compared to its opponent. Making 11 Marines at a time, though, is quite nice, and Marines, in theory, do scale better than a Roach Hydra on mass, but that choke point is quite rough. having to get down that ramp and kind of go around, but there's the Raven revealing these roaches, meaning that some of them will indeed be getting killed off, as these roaches, I think they're just unburrowing for a second. Nice scan from AnyDev as well, so picking off a good number of these roaches. The Raven is trying to maintain vision here as the bio stims forward. Notably, AnyDev isn't just rallying reinforcements to this army, so it seems to have some sort of pooling mechanic as far as how it controls its forces. And so a lot of those Marines do go down. However, many more have been produced. The Terran bot is about to have +2 attack, which is nice. Another attempt at that expo does get shut down. Meanwhile, Dodo still Nidus mining at this base. Another scan as the bio goes down the ramp. What an exciting game this has been. Man, oh man, these sort of newer bots that are getting lots of development really are delivering some very exciting games, as AnyDev does chase a few roaches quite far away. The Hydras are like, I guess we'll follow. The Nidus does actually get found, so the drones burrow, and they do now have to unburrow and try and, I guess, mine normally. Something like that. Units are pathing into very interesting paths as the Raven and Medivacs are being chased by the Hydras. They want to go home, but they cannot, as those Hydras are blocking their path. AnyDev is continuously pumping out more units here. It does have an attempt at a 5th base at a different location, which is very cool to see. And now this will be a good test for Dodo, as it does go for... Well, AnyDev is going for a battle cruiser. So we haven't really seen AnyDev versus Dodo versus mass air units yet. It seems to just play this generic Roach Hydra composition. Not that that's a bad thing, unless those Hydras do just move command away, which they did in that case, as AnyDev gobbles up a lot of these Zerg units. There is +2 attack on the way for the Zerg bot now, but it does seem like Dodo struggles the longer the game goes on, as this Roach Hydra composition just doesn't trade out that well. We do have another bit of Nidus mining going on. The Nidus positioning on this one is very interesting, so I'm wondering if Dodo like prioritizes how the math works on this, because it's rather close to 3 mineral patches, but then further away from the other 3, whereas this one, it was sort of more front and center. AnyDev is being pushed off another base. We do have that glitchy anti-armor missile fire. It just looks like a potato, kind of, as we have this orbital command getting pushed away. Marines moving forward. AnyDev has started adding tanks into its composition, which will surely help. However, the numbers remain to be seen. We do have lots of upgrades for AnyDev as well. In fact, dare I say, it might actually have too many upgrades in this game, because it's already got so many upgrades, but it's built 2 tanks, yet it's got, I mean, attack for the tanks, and then it's just getting out the BCs now. So, I mean, the upgrades will be good on the BCs, but it seems a little preemptive, almost. At least on that attack upgrade, but still, I mean, upgrades are more often than not a good thing. AnyDev has grouped up its force, so it's doing quite well. These battle cruisers are doing work, and we do have spores and infestors on the way from Dodo. As a response to the BC's presence, it's definitely adding in the spores to counter that, but whether it's going to have what it needs to deal with this big army remains to be seen. The upgrades are still not great from Dodo, not even having 2-2. Just getting +2 attack on the way now, but I mean, AnyDev's kind of a wrecking ball coming forward. There is a spore crawler, but that's going to go down fairly quickly. Hydras are doing what they can. Now, most of these Marines on the ground are dying as they sort of run out of steam, and there's a big counterattack by Dodo. That's where a lot of its supply was, hitting this command center, and AnyDev loses another base, which is quite painful, as it has been, well, it's gonna start running out of money soon, as, like, it's been on, well, 4 bases for quite a while, dropping mules at this base. The 3rd and the 4th are still in good condition. It's struggled to get up that 5th base, though. Now, this attack does seem to be having some decent success, though, as these two are just skirmishing. This is quite a scrappy game at this point. Hydras are forcing the battle cruisers away. That BC did not teleport out of there, so it seems AnyDev doesn't actually have the behavior that a lot of Terran bots have, which is to teleport the BCs to safety and repair. Now this battle cruiser is so close to finding this Nidus mining worm, which would be really, really nice, seeing as how that is a significant chunk of Dodo's economy. But the Zerg bot is chasing that BC. It does go down. We've got overlords flying around all over the map. I really don't know why Dodo does this. It likes to just sort of fling its overlords across the map. It never gets overlord speed, so far anyway. But here we have AnyDev just trying to build up an army. It's added in some cyclones to its composition. It's producing a lot more marine supply, though, is quite good for Dodo. And we do have roaches and hydras being repelled. That raven worth its weight in gold. Looks like there is some overlords that are going to die. AnyDev does have this 5th base up and established, which is so important for its economy. Now Dodo is sort of pivoting. If Dodo can shut down that 5th base again, that would be huge. Looks like it will try and breach the natural instead, though. Going up this ramp, there is the infestors, and there's actually double neural parasite on the battle cruisers. The Raven, I don't think, was present to actually help with that. It must have been chasing another unit to the left, so the neural did last a little bit. It does get shut down, though, by the tanks and a scan. Anybot does have the 5th base up. There's also this 6th base going up. Dodo seems to just like staying on the nice around 66 drone number, which a lot of bots and Starcraft 2 timing attacks rely on. Neural Parasite goes down on a battle cruiser once again. Will there be a scan to handle this, as AnyDev doesn't want to kill its own battle cruiser, so the BC just kills a lot of friendly Marines, but it does eventually actually run out. So that's quite nice. Another battle cruiser gets a little far forward, almost goes down, still pursuing. Roaches and Festers being driven back. Dodo is maxed out. It hasn't got +2 armor, though, so it seems to be limited by gas as it prioritizes building units over getting further upgrades. Meanwhile, AnyDev is just rolling with its upgrades, still getting 3-3 across the board. That's going to be problematic for Dodo, depending how long this game goes on. Dodo does land a Fungal. Fungal is very effective against Marines, so that's quite nice. Hydras are chasing down this battle cruiser, so that does die, disappearing out of existence. And we do have more BCs on the way from AnyDev. AnyDev attempting to get up like a 7th base. Somehow it's been able to secure this base up on the upper left, as Dodo has just prioritized attacks towards the front instead of picking off those bases like it did before. The Hydras seemingly rout and do not do a fighting retreat for Dodo once the situation turns. We've seen that a few times this game, which isn't great, as I think it's almost always worth to at least stutter step, even when you're retreating. And yeah, AnyDev just doing a great job controlling its army. We do eventually have an attack actually come up towards this 6th base location, so that will start to burn. However, it's still alive, so that could get a mule, get an SCV to repair it potentially. We shall see. For now, again, SCV is building. SCVs are actually transferring over there, but okay. Dodo does go to finish the job. So again, very great behavior from both of these bots. Dodo, for example, changing its target to go kill a base. I don't know what sort of programming is going on behind the scenes for it to be like, yes, I should actually go clean up that base, but it definitely is rather effective. Now, Hydras and Roaches fighting against a rather small group of Marines, as AnyDev's army got a little split up there. Hydras are still doing what they can. We do eventually get enough gas for Dodo to fire up 3-2, which is quite important for its longevity in this game. Resources lost are rather close, all things considered, and AnyDev has actually fallen down in supply quite a bit this game. The BC is just not getting the efficiency they need, and it seems that, yeah, AnyDev does sometimes move a little too far forward with its Marines when taking its fight. Now, battle cruisers in the Raven and the Marines are grouping up. There is a neural parasite on that BC on the right. These other battle cruisers do go in to try and save their friend. However, there's just not the numbers here for AnyDev. Losing that 6th base really hurt its economy. It does at least have this base biting still, but it's down from the 80 SCVs it was on earlier. The battle cruisers, I mean, they're good, but they're not doing anything amazing. And yeah, they definitely need some repair here, but AnyDev doesn't seem to be a bot that prioritizes repairing these units. This battle cruiser may stay alive again, but it also may never be repaired, as that's just not how AnyDev rolls, it seems. As it is more of a... It's a bot with a wider range of strategies, so it's understandable it hasn't had that high amount of focus put into like keeping the BCs alive, unlike sort of other bots that do play a more defensive style overall. Dodo does try an attack on in here. AnyDev's holding the line somehow. But if it loses another base, I think it's going to be in a lot of trouble here, as it just doesn't have that good of an economy to keep replacing these units. The trades maybe just haven't been quite as good as they need to be. Dodo, meanwhile, still Nidus mining, but it hasn't really secured up that many more bases. So Dodo is actually starting to mine out itself. So incomes will be dropping across the board here. This command center does sort of get saved as a tank distracts the army of Dodo. Now, Dodo tries to go up this ramp once again. Battle cruisers on the high ground. 3-3 BCs are pretty good in head-on fights against Hydralisks with a few Marines to support. I imagine this will eventually turn, and I think Dodo will run if previous fights are a good indicator. And yeah, there's almost enough Hydras to kill off this BC, but it's still staying alive, holding the line. If the battle cruiser goes down, that may just be the end of AnyDev. AnyDev's units do seem to be controlled in groups, so this tank is kind of just sleeping as it hasn't got a new mission or something like that. And eventually Dodo does just seem to outtrade AnyDev in this game. The battle cruiser up to 21 kills, just raining fire on this Zerg force. There's 2 more being produced, which is a big deal actually, because I mean it's only 8 Hydras, so another battle cruiser coming out may save the day, may buy AnyDev the time it needs. AnyDev seems to just rally its units towards its natural though, which isn't great. They're actually on move command, and so some of those Marines not necessarily firing when they should be. Maybe the battle cruiser production can outpace the Hydralisk production, though. If they were getting teleported back to be repaired, I think it genuinely would be enough to keep AnyDev alive. There is another burning command center flying out for AnyDev. It does lose a BC, though, producing 8 Marines at a time. The tank in the back is Siege. Battle cruisers versus just Hydra Trickle is such an interesting fight here. Now, this Raven, we'll see if it uses any spells at any point, but it is doing its job as a detector, as Dodo does lose a few units. AnyDev has crawled back up in supply. Dodo is really, really starting to mine out here. It hasn't built a new hatchery. It hasn't expanded or gone for a Nidus, anything like that, but oh, it does find this base of AnyDev, which is so, so important. AnyDev has got this location on the left, but even this is starting to mine out now. So the Red Terran bot needs to get up another base. It's trying to expand to this location. It's still producing these battle cruisers, getting out a couple more tanks. That tank will go down. Anti-armor missile does fly at those queens, but again, it doesn't seem like it syncs up too well for AnyDev. Just, it seems to have its own sort of independent requirements or something, and then goes for it just because why not? And this is where things tend to go bad for AnyDev, when it takes a fight, when it definitely shouldn't be. Now this battle cruiser is staying alive, but again, AnyDev not repairing at all. I mean, which is an interesting approach, because sometimes bots sort of shoot themselves in the foot by overly relying on repair. Now this base in the upper left has floated over here. Dodo doesn't know about this. Dodo also is not long distance mining and is just about mined out. So while the blue Zerg is maxed out, it may eventually run out of money here. It's not going for another expansion. This gold base is just about gone. And yeah, Dodo needs to get some damage done to AnyDev. Now killing this base would be huge, and it is going to find it. So that this game is actually getting so darn close, as both of these bots have kind of stopped expanding as much. AnyDev has definitely attempted to more, as it's now mining in the upper left, producing some SCVs. This base is getting established. There is still a decent bioforce, some battle cruisers out, but Dodo has been able to maintain its max out. Still, though, I am concerned by the lack of long-distance mining from Dodo, because that means eventually its economy will just grind to a complete halt. So it's kind of going to come down to one final fight, it would seem, but oh, Dodo getting on top of this base is a huge move, as AnyDev really just has this one base left. As the bio does stim forward, battle cruisers moving forward. This is a good trade for the Terran. I'm not sure Dodo can afford to replace any units it loses at this point. So while the Zerg does have higher supply, I'm not sure it can take on this nice Marine ball with battle cruisers to back it up. But then the Zerg kind of out-positions the Terran. We've got one tank, one battle cruiser probably going to get picked off here. AnyDev is going for a bit of a Hail Mary push as it moves forward. Killing off the Hydras is huge. 13 Hydras versus 3 BCs on the map. Neither bot really producing anything at this point. AnyDevs, its main base is now being breached, so that's production that's going to die. What a phenomenal game this is between these two. Queens off of creep will not be able to transfuse each other, and then the BCs and Marines just destroy them, so AnyDev is going home to try and save itself. We've got one more battlecruiser about to pop out. It's going to be 13 Hydras against 4 BCs, and there's no production left from Dodo at all, really. So, oh my gosh, this game is so darn close. However, the main base of Anybot is being cleared out. I don't believe Anybot is a bot that replaces production once it loses it either. Now, these bases in the upper left are structures, so it will not be eliminated once this main base gets cleaned on out, if it gets cleaned on out. And then we do have AnyDev just pushing forward into Dodo. Dodo's last slightly mining base is going to get cleaned out. Is there still a Raven? Yes, there is. It can reveal these units. The main base of AnyDev has just been ransacked, though. And looks like it is trying to build a new barracks, which is interesting and some good redundancy to see. Unfortunately, it's trying to build it in its main base. It does decide to build an eBay by this command center, though, which is important to see that it is willing to build things elsewhere on the map. But yeah, AnyDev having a bit of a tough time here as the main base gets gutted. It's down to 2 armies. This is a phenomenal TVZ between these two bots. Just such cool programming all around has brought us to this situation. I do believe the 3 battlecruisers should be able to kill these Hydras, even though the BCs are short on HP. But that really will determine the game. Battlecruisers versus Hydras. It looks like AnyDev is building a new barracks as well, which is actually by this orbital command, which is so important to see. Now, it's not building any more depots, as it does seem to still want to build depots inside its main base, which does mean it's feeding SCVs to their death. It looks like it attempted to build the barracks in the main a few times, and then it just decided to build it elsewhere. But here we go. This is the big fight. Battlecruisers flying over, but oh no, AnyDev says GG, and don't GG AnyDev, no, you had the game won, and it just gives up. It had killed all but one of the Hydras, and it was just literally firing to kill the last Hydra, and this is the unfortunate consequence we see of why programming your bot to GG and have manners may cost you games, because it's hard to program that logic, and the developer of AnyDev may be kicking themselves a little bit if they do see this game. But what a phenomenal game between these two, and it just goes to show why you don't really need to program in GG behavior, or at least if you do, it shouldn't be if your bot's like still mining, still building things like AnyDev. Like, I don't know what possible trigger was hit for it to say, hey, I gotta throw in the towel, maybe not being able to build something, like losing the SCVs constantly or something, but like it still had 46 supply, 14 SCVs, and was still rebuilding. It did say GG. Wasn't GG test or anything like that, but okay. Dodo technically wins the game, even though AnyDev had it won. And yeah, let me know what you guys think of programming your bot to GG, that sort of thing. Subscribe to the channel if you watched up until this point. If you want to support these longer casts, consider becoming a YouTube member. Click that like button as well if you guys are still watching. And if you want to see a rematch, let me know. I'll see you guys next time. Thanks so much for tuning on in.